When you first start flying in VR, one of the things you'll notice is how much more physically demanding it is to check your surroundings. In fact, it can be almost impossible to check your SIX whilst you're holding on to your HOTAS. It must have been a massive challenge for real pilots back in the day. On the one hand, this is simulation and immersion at its best. On the other hand, especially if you fly PvP, you're going to find yourself at a disadvantage if you can't check your SIX quickly and easily. This is where the NeckSafer app can help. Let's have a look at how to install it and set it up. There are two versions of the NeckSafer app. One is called VRNeckSafer, and that is for when you're playing IL-2 using the SteamVR runtime. The second version is called XRNeckSafer, and that is for when you're using the OpenXR runtime. So make sure you use the correct version of NeckSafer depending on which VR runtime you use to play your game. All of the demonstration work in this video has been done using the Pimax Crystal Light. If you are looking to buy anything from the Pimax store right now, you can use my code DUNKS at the checkout for a 2% discount. I will put some links to Pimax products in the video description below, including to their new Dream Air headsets, which have incredible specifications and weigh less than 200 grams, which is remarkable. Let's get into the NeckSafer setup, and we'll start with VRNeckSafer, which is for use with the SteamVR runtime. You can download VRNeckSafer from GitLab. I'll put the link in the description below. You will see in the README notes that this is for SteamVR, and there's a separate link to XRNeckSafer for use with OpenXR. Scroll down to the download link at the bottom and then extract the files to wherever you want to keep the application on your system. Once you've extracted the files and located them, it's this file here, VRNeckSafer, which will launch the application. I usually pin it to the taskbar for ease of reference. Note that you can't launch VRNeckSafer until SteamVR is running, so let's fire up IL-2 via SteamVR. I'm in IL-2 now, and the first thing you need to check is that you've got your default VR view keybind set, because you're going to need to use that in NeckSafer as well. So now I've launched VRNeckSafer. Unfortunately, it's a very small user interface. Let's take a look at how to set it up. Firstly, click on the Set Reset button, and then select the button on your HOTAS that is bound to your default VR view in IL-2. I use a virtual joystick, so I had to select the button manually from the drop-down menus, but you can try to use the scan function and see if it recognizes your button press. Once that is done, you then need to press your default VR view button on your HOTAS to calibrate the app and start it working. With the app now working, let's have a look at the two main modes it can run in. There is a manual rotation mode, which requires you to bind extra commands to your HOTAS to shift your VR view left or right. And then there's the auto rotation mode, which is the one I'm going to show you here. Make sure you tick enable to switch it on. It doesn't require any extra HOTAS bindings, it just works automatically as you turn your head based on the values in the table, which can be edited and can also be shown in graphical format. How this works is that as I turn my head at certain step intervals, the VR view will change by a greater amount, so that I'm eventually looking behind myself even though I've only turned my head by 120 degrees. You can see that there are also values for moving your head in the left-right axis and the forward axis as well. I don't use it on those axes, so I'm going to zero all of those values out. I also don't like having so many changes in the VR view as I turn my head, so I'm going to zero out all of these values until I get to 100 degrees and then have a single 30-degree increase in the VR view angle at that point. So now as I turn my head, there's just one discontinuity at about 100 degrees, which allows me to check my 6 without so many interruptions in the VR view. This is how my setup looks in flight. There is a potential issue here if you're trying to track an object at your 4 o'clock where the discontinuity is, but you can get around that by binding a hold button to your HOTAS, which will temporarily suspend the auto rotation function whilst you're pressing the button. Moving on, let's now look at XRNeckSafer, which is for when you are using the OpenXR runtime. I will put the link to XRNeckSafer in the video description. Note the reference to OpenComposite if you want to run IL-2 in OpenXR instead of SteamVR and avoid the SteamVR performance overhead, you're going to need to use OpenComposite. You can click through to the OpenComposite download page here. I use the system-wide installation version. Once you've installed this, you just need to click on this button here to force your applications to switch from using SteamVR to OpenXR instead. XRNeckSafer has its own software installer for you to download and run. There are some instructions here for how to use the application and some more detailed installation instructions further down the page. Note that the XRNeckSafer API layer may need to be first on your list of API layers for it to work properly. Once you've downloaded and run the installer, it will install the application to your C drive program files. I recommend you leave it there. Click on this icon here to launch the application. Once you've launched XRNeckSafer, click on the Set Center button and then use this keyboard and joystick mapping tool to set the centering button to be the same as your default VR view keybind in IL-2. XRNeckSafer does allow you to adjust both the yaw and the pitch axis of your VR view, but I only use it to adjust the yaw axis to help check my 6. It can be used in manual rotation mode, which requires extra HOTAS bindings, or auto rotation mode, which works automatically as you turn your head, and that's the mode I use. I highly recommend using the smooth mode, which is a big advantage compared to VRNeckSafer. And then all you need to do is specify at what angle you want the auto rotation to start taking effect and the amount of amplification that you desire. In my setup, I've got it working from 90 degrees of rotation with an amplification of 140%. You can also click on hold and set a keybind for the hold button, which when pressed will suppress the auto rotation and allow your VR headset to work as normal. This can also be used to toggle the auto rotation on and off. We are now ready to use XRNeckSafer, so load up IL-2. Make sure to begin with that you press your default VR view centering button keybind to calibrate the app. And then how this works is as you turn your head past 90 degrees, the rate of rotation increases by 140% and it allows you to check your 6 much more easily. And it works smoothly. It's a big improvement compared to VRNeckSafer, which only has the stepwise auto rotation feature. Here's how it looks when you're in the cockpit. It's nice and smooth, you can check your 6 very easily, and your neck will be all the better for it. I hope this has been useful. Put any questions in the comments below, and thanks for watching.